What if the reality you're experiencing is not reality itself, but your mind's interpretation of it? And what if understanding that concept could fundamentally change your life? David, William, Pierce, welcome back. And this week's teaching explores something called Ābhāsa, and really understanding it has the power to change how we experience reality itself. In a tantric understanding of reality, all manifestation is an Ābhāsa, a shining or projection of the light of consciousness. The sound of my voice, the feeling in your chest, or thoughts moving through your mind, all of them are vibrations arising within awareness itself. What we call reality is actually a process. We perceive countless characteristics, and then the mind synthesizes them into what it calls an object or a person, a situation or experience. Most people assume they're experiencing reality directly, but Tantra suggests that what we're experiencing is reality filtered through our perception. For example, there is no universal pot. According to this teaching, there are colors and shapes, textures and associations, as well as countless other characteristics that the mind assembles into something and labels pot. And the same is true of people, relationships, and even ourselves. This begins to explain how two people can have completely different experiences of the same event. The physical facts may be identical, but the individual interpretation differs. And often what shapes our experience isn't the objective characteristics at all, but the subjective layers that we bring to them. How useful something feels, whether we like it, what past experience we've had with it, or what meaning we've attached to it. This is where the teaching becomes incredibly powerful. Most modern culture tends to prioritize what it calls objective reality, the measurable, the observable, the things everyone typically agrees upon. But Tantra points out something worth noting, that nobody actually experiences reality without a subjective component. Every experience is filtered through our individual consciousness. The thought you have about an event, the emotion it evokes, the memories it triggers, all of these become part of your reality. And yet we often act as though our interpretation is in fact reality itself. And that's where conflict, misunderstanding, and suffering often begins, when we stop recognizing that we're simply experiencing one perspective among many possible perspectives. But viewing life through a tantric lens invites us to inquire into reality itself, an exploration of how consciousness creates experience. Have you ever had an argument, for example, with your partner or a loved one where you've felt completely right? Or have you ever looked back at a situation years later and realized that you interpreted it differently then than how you do now? Then you've experienced this teaching directly. You just may not have had the language to express it. Most of us live so close to our thoughts that we never really question them. A thought appears, we believe it, an emotion follows, and we react. The cycle repeats. For example, someone doesn't text you back, and we equate that to that we're being ignored. Or a client says no when we believe that we're failing. Or perhaps a partner seems distant, and we think that something is wrong. The event itself may be neutral, but our interpretation creates our experience of it. And because our interpretations are often shaped by old samskaras, the subconscious imprints from previous experiences, we end up recreating familiar realities again and again without realizing that we're doing it. This is Joe Dispenza's work, how we create our personal reality and repeat it. And we need to break the habit of being ourselves if we want to experience a different reality. And the thing is, you are not experiencing reality as a neutral observer. You are experiencing it through a uniquely conditioned perspective, the lens of your own conditioning, memories and assumptions. One of the most beautiful parts of this teaching explores what happens between the thoughts. There's a line I used to use when I taught that the music isn't just the notes you play, it's the space between the notes. And Tantra says that every experience follows a cycle. Something appears, you experience it, and then it dissolves. A thought arises, you experience it, and it disappears, or an emotion is felt, and then it passes. But immediately after dissolution, before the next thought or emotion arrives, there is a brief moment of spacious awareness, a moment of stillness, of pure being. And according to the teachings, we touch this space countless times a day without actually recognizing it. The great secret of this teaching is that the space between experiences is not empty. In fact, it's your deepest nature, your core, your essence, the awareness within which all experiences arise and dissolve. And the more familiar that you can become with that awareness, the less trapped you can be by the thoughts that are moving through it. This is one of the reasons I'm doing the work that I am through men's transformational yoga. Many midlife men aren't struggling because they're broken, but because they've become identified with a particular story or identity or version of themselves that no longer fits. Navigating this rebuild of clarity and grounded direction, not by giving more information, but by helping them step back far enough to see the patterns, then allows them to consciously choose differently. Personal development without a strong spiritual foundation develops a false confidence in external reality. And spiritual development without the right systems in place raises awareness to become so hyper-focused on the issue without necessarily the tools to actually create change. I'm finding it's the conscious combination of the two that allows you to meet life at your edge and to enjoy it fully. So if something in that speaks to you, follow the link in the description. So returning to the teaching, it goes even further. It says that every time a thought dissolves, we face a choice: recognition or forgetting. We can recognize the spacious awareness beneath the thought, or we can immediately rush into the next one, the next distraction or stimulation. Most of us unconsciously choose to forget repeatedly, and it's why we get caught in our loops and can end up feeling so challenged by life. And this is why meditation matters. Not because meditation creates awareness. Awareness is always present. That's all there is. Meditation simply helps us become aware of it. In tantric teaching, meditation is described as a destructive practice, not because it's harmful, but because it gradually begins to dissolve the unconscious patterns and identification that obscure your true nature. And the longer we can remain in the gap between the thoughts, the easier it becomes to recognize the ground beneath them. And when we recognize that ground, something extraordinary can happen. We stop being completely controlled by our conditioning. I'm going to take a sip. The teaching ultimately points toward a radical possibility: that you are not your thoughts, your emotions, or the stories running through your mind. You are the awareness within which all of those experiences arise and dissolve, from which they are made. And from that perspective, something changes. You realize that whilst you may not always control what appears, you do have the ability to transform your relationship with it. And that means you can change your experience of reality to the point where you're no longer merely reacting to it, but actually participating in its co-creation. You are not the thought. You are the awareness in which the thought appears. Most people believe they are victims of circumstance, but this teaching offers a different possibility, that while circumstances may influence your experience, they do not determine your inner reality. You are not, and never have been, a victim of your circumstance. For no one else can determine your inner state but you, as Harish writes in Tantra Illuminated. And this is Tony Robbins' work. Change your state, change your situation, change your life. Circumstances shape us, but they do not need to define us. Your interpretation matters. And those things remain available to you in every moment. This doesn't mean that life magically becomes easy all of a sudden. It doesn't. I promise. That difficult emotions, they still appear, and experiences are still challenging and sometimes painful. But it means you can begin to relate to those moments differently when they do occur. And they don't have the same hold over you. You stop being entirely at their mercy because you realize you are not your conditioning. You get to discover the possibility of choosing different. And that gets to be profoundly empowering. So this week's contemplation is this: where in your life are you treating your interpretation as absolute reality? Where did you automatically react from habit or conditioning or story? And where perhaps only briefly can you notice a moment of space, of possibility that allows you to respond differently? So if this teaching has resonated with you, there is a quiz in the description to help you integrate it more deeply, and you can get the answers for free simply by following the link. So thank you for being here, and I'll see you in the next transmission. Cheers.